The Denali Nightmare. Part 1. The Whispers in the Wild. The headlamp beam jittered, not from the relentless assault of the Alaskan wind that clawed at our tent like a hungry beast, but from the frantic tremor in my own hand. Outside, beyond the thin nylon barrier, something howled. It wasn't the familiar cry of a wolf, a sound that spoke of the wild and untamed. This was different. This was a guttural lament that resonated deep within my bones, a sound that tasted of ancient sorrow and something far more sinister. Liam, ever the pragmatist, muttered something about the wind playing tricks. Sarah, usually so vibrant and full of laughter, sat hunched, her eyes wide and reflecting the flickering light like trapped fireflies. We were a trio, escapees from the soul-crushing monotony of spreadsheets and traffic jams, seeking solace in the raw beauty of Denali National Park. Our Midwest lives, once so predictable, now felt a lifetime away, replaced by a creeping dread that clung to us like the ever-present chill. The carefree exuberance of our initial days had evaporated with the first unsettling signs. It began subtly, a prickling unease that danced at the periphery of our conversations, leaving awkward silences in its wake. We'd catch each other staring into the dense woods, a shared, unspoken question in our eyes. Liam, trying to maintain his usual jovial facade, blamed it on the sheer isolation, the overwhelming vastness of a landscape that dwarfed our human insignificance. Sarah, more sensitive to the atmosphere, spoke of a heavy feeling, like an unseen presence watching our every move. Then came the noises. Not the rustling of small animals or the snap of twigs underfoot, but something else. Unsettling howls, deeper and more resonant than any wolf, echoed through the twilight hours, seeming to emanate from the very heart of the silent, snow-dusted pines. They weren't hunting calls, they were mournful, almost accusatory. And with the howls came the distinct sensation of being observed. Not the casual awareness of wildlife, but an intense, focused scrutiny that sent shivers crawling down our spines even huddled around our meager campfire. The park ranger at the entrance, a grizzled man with eyes that held the wisdom of the wilderness, had mentioned the possibility of rogue wolves, animals driven by desperation or injury. But these howls, they were ancient, primal, laced with a hunger that felt disturbingly personal. One night, the memory of which still claws at the edges of my sanity, we sat around a crackling fire, the flames battling the encroaching darkness. The air was sharp with the scent of pine and wood smoke, a comforting aroma that did little to soothe our frayed nerves. Then it emerged. A jagged silhouette detached itself from the dense treeline, its form elongated and unnatural against the dying embers. It wasn't the rounded bulk of a bear or the sleek profile of a wolf. This was something wrong. Massive, easily twice the size of a grizzly, its limbs seemed too long, its posture disturbingly humanoid. And its eyes. They burned with an unnatural, malevolent red, like twin embers glowing in the abyss. The air around us thickened, heavy and suffocating. A cloying sweetness, like the scent of decaying meat, mingled with the campfire smoke, turning the comforting aroma into something sickening. A primal terror, raw and instinctual, seized us. Words failed. In that shared moment of horrified recognition, a name, a legend whispered in hushed tones and childhood stories, clawed its way into our consciousness. The Wendigo. The creature's legend, a dark thread woven into the fabric of indigenous folklore, spoke of a monstrous being, an embodiment of greed, insatiable hunger, and the darkest aspects of the human spirit. It was said to feast on human flesh, its hunger growing exponentially with each kill, its very essence a corruption of the natural order. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through me. We were miles from any semblance of civilization, utterly and completely at its mercy. As if sensing the icy tendrils of our fear, the Wendigo unleashed a roar that seemed to tear the very fabric of the night. It wasn't a biological sound, it was a shriek of pure, unadulterated malice that vibrated through the ground beneath us. We scrambled to our feet, adrenaline flooding our systems, turning our limbs to lead and our minds to a frantic blur. Reason, the cornerstone of our civilized lives, became a distant, mocking echo in the face of such ancient, primal terror. We ran. Blindly, desperately, crashing through the undergrowth, the chilling howls of the Wendigo echoing behind us, each cry a promise of pursuit. Part 2, the unraveling. Days bled into a desperate, chaotic struggle for survival. The unforgiving Alaskan winter, once a picturesque backdrop, became as much an enemy as the monstrous entity that stalked us. The snow, pristine and beautiful from a distance, transformed into a treacherous adversary, clinging to our clothes, sapping our strength with every step, turning our escape into a grueling test of endurance. The once picturesque landscape morphed into a hostile maze of towering pines that stood like silent, judgmental sentinels, mocking our futile flight. Exhaustion gnawed at us, a bone-deep weariness that threatened to pull us down into the snow. But the thought of stopping, of succumbing to the gnawing fatigue, was infinitely more terrifying than the burning in our lungs and the ache in our muscles. Liam, the easygoing jokester of our group, the one who always had a quip ready to diffuse tension, retreated into a chilling silence. His eyes, once bright with amusement, now held a haunted, distant flicker, a reflection of something dark and unknowable. He'd mutter to himself, low guttural sounds that resembled no language we knew, his voice a disturbing counterpoint to the wind's mournful song. One particularly brutal night, huddled in the inadequate shelter of a makeshift snow cave we desperately scraped together, Greg's demeanor took a horrifying turn. A manic hunger, stark and unsettling, blazed in his eyes. His gaze, once friendly, now held a predatory gleam. He lunged at Sarah, his teeth bared in a feral snarl that twisted his familiar features into something monstrous. The sound of Sarah's terrified scream ripped through the frigid night air as Greg's teeth tore into her arm, ripping away flesh and sanity in a single brutal act. In that horrifying, gut-wrenching moment, a terrifying realization slammed into me with the force of a physical blow. The Wendigo wasn't just a predator that stalked its prey, it was a corrupting influence, a malevolent entity that could twist minds and bodies into grotesque parodies of their former selves. The Greg we knew, the kind, slightly goofy friend, was gone, replaced by a ravenous beast, a puppet dancing to the Wendigo's horrifying tune. The primal fear that had been simmering within me, a constant undercurrent of dread, boiled over into a white-hot surge of adrenaline. An unexpected strength, born of pure desperation, flooded my veins. I shoved Greg back with a force I didn't know I possessed, grabbed Sarah's bleeding arm, and bolted out of the suffocating,